Emotional content is filmed on Whadjuk Noongar land. This podcast acknowledges the traditional owners and custodians of country. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Come for the stories, stay for the connection. I'm your host, Amy Jane Brand, and this is your weekly dose of emotional content. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Emotional Content. I am really looking forward to sitting down and recording this episode for you guys. It's one that I feel like I've wanted to record for a long time. And if you are currently smoking, know somebody that smokes, or trying to quit yourself, this episode will be really good for you. And I'm just going to give you a rundown of my journey with it. And it's just a really realistic episode. I found a lot of episodes talking about this tends to just tell people to stop smoking because it's bad for you and doesn't really have much compassion to why it's so difficult to actually quit. And I have been on the receiving end of somebody not quitting and losing their life because of it. And I have taken control of my own addiction with it. So I can see it from both sides. And I just have a lot of compassion when it comes to addiction in general. And I wanted to share my journey with this in particular and also give you some tips on how I got through something that had a hold on me for a long period of time. So the first time I started smoking was when I was in year 8. I remember one of my friends having it and we were sitting down the park of the school and we lit up our first cigarette and we couldn't really understand what was so appealing about it, but we just had it with some Baker's Delight bread. I'm pretty sure we got this is my memory. We had like a Baker's Delight scroll and some cigarettes to try and we were sitting in the middle of like a school oval. So that's what we were doing. That was the first time I picked up a cigarette and I didn't really enjoy it, but I also was kind of curious of it because my dad was smoking and that was like a really big deal growing up as to like getting him to quit smoking. Unfortunately, with his heart condition, my dad did continue to have cigarettes here and there and it caused a lot of heartache for my mum and my family. And I was really bothered by it as well, but I didn't quite understand what an addiction is at that age. So I felt quite resentful for him continuing to smoke too and the stress that it was putting my mum through. So yeah, I just kind of like rebelled and was like, fuck it, I'm going to have a cigarette. So that's where it started smoking for me. It was at school. When I was in high school, I started doing it with some friends like before class or after class, just being little rebels, having a ciggy. And then it kind of progressed from there, from having a cheeky one at school to when I left school. It happened pretty much every weekend, every time that I was drinking or, getting on drugs like I would be associating that with cigarettes as well. So drinking or partying in general came hand in hand with cigarettes. So I started smoking every single weekend pretty much, or every time I was out in a social situation. All my friends were smoking as well. Like it was just a very normal thing. By this point, my dad had passed away from being a smoker and that didn't even really stop me. I think I was just like so rebellious, so didn't give a fuck that I was just going to do it anyway. Yeah, it's kind of like a reactive way of handling it. Like, fuck it, I'll just do it and not giving a shit about my health. Like I was just, spiraling. So that's what I did. And by the time I was 19, I was pretty much a full-time smoker. Like I was having almost a pack a day. Every single day. It was a very expensive habit, but the cigarettes, mind you, were a lot cheaper back then. And I was working an office job and in the mornings I would have 2 cigarettes and a triple shot coffee. At that time, I wasn't really having any bad side effects from smoking. So I wasn't really thinking about what it was doing to me. I wasn't really getting a sore throat from it even unless I was like having a really big couple of days, like having a bender and I was just smoking nonstop. Then I would get some side effects of smoking, but just day-to-day smoking, I wasn't really noticing too much. By the time I was 20 and I had been smoking, this heavily for a couple of years now, I did end up having some negative side effects to it. I ended up going to the doctors with a cough that was like really dry and niggly. It was like constantly irritating my throat, couldn't stop the cough. I wasn't sick. It was a really like irritating thing to deal with every single day. So I went to the doctors and I had everything checked out, and they turned around and told me that I have been burning away something that's called the mucosa in the throat, and it's like the lining of your throat that actually protects it. So I essentially was burning that away with how much I was smoking, and it was causing that amount of coughing. So that was something that made me want to quit because it started really affecting like my everyday life. Back then, I had the willpower to cold turkey. So that was pretty much what I did to get myself off of cigarettes. I just got rid of them, wouldn't let myself have them, and I successfully managed to cold turkey off of ciggies then. Once I had quit smoking full time back then, I just let myself have cigarettes on the weekend with friends when I was drinking, or whenever I was in social situations, I would have a cigarette, but I did not let myself do it during the week anymore. And that went on for years. I lived like that, and I was okay with that being my normal. I like to be quite realistic when it comes to addiction. That, for me, I felt comfortable with just having a cigarette here and there when I was out and just not doing it full time. I always craved it whenever I drank, and I still do today. Like, it's something that I feel is ingrained in me that goes hand in hand with being social. So it's a really difficult one for me to shake. But yeah, I just carried on doing that for years, all the way up until I was 25. So I wasn't really smoking that much other than on the weekends, or maybe, I don't know, a couple of times a month, like nothing that was affecting my health at the time. So by the time I was 25 years old, I was in America, and all of my American friends were like, why are you having a ciggy? There was like one other person that I knew that would smoke cigarettes, and he stuck to cigarettes through and through. But some of the girls were like, why don't you get onto the Juul? And if any of you know what the Juul is, it was like the biggest vape to pop off at the time. It went viral. Like, the Juul was the one device that everybody was using at the time. There wasn't like all these other competitive ones. It was the Juul. It's like, you're smoking the Juul if you're going to vape. And after trying my friend's Juul, I was pretty much a full-time vapor. Like, one, I thought it was better for you, but two, it was so addictive. Like, smoking a vape is so different to smoking a cigarette, in my opinion. It was constantly hitting that thing because you could do it inside, because it doesn't smell. It's like a fruity flavor or a caramel flavor. Like, you can do it anywhere, literally. You can go to the bathroom, you can do it in the house. Anywhere you want to vape, you can vape. So I feel like the nicotine addiction hits so much harder with vaping because you're not forced to go outside to have a cigarette because it fucking stinks. And it's like illegal to smoke in most places, in buildings and things like that. And nobody wants to smoke inside their home. So you don't really smoke it as much as you do a vape. So I jumped onto the vape and I was hooked immediately. Just before I'd go to bed, I'd vape, which I didn't realize was affecting my sleep so badly at the time. As soon as I woke up in the morning, I was vaping. I didn't need to eat as much either. Like, obviously that much nicotine in your system, it suppresses your appetite. So I was well and truly hooked by the time I was about to go to my first Coachella festival, where, if any of you are OG followers, you remember that the first Coachella that most of us went to, there was a whole bunch of Aussie influencers, myself included, went with Beginning Boutique to Coachella. And this is where I introduced a bunch of Australian influencers, one of them including Michael, to vaping. And I remember all of us walking down this like dirt road at Palm Springs, going and buying Juuls and pods and portable chargers so that it wouldn't run out when we were at the festival. Like, we were all kitted up and everybody was vaping. Vaping literally just took off. Anybody that had it was hooked on it. It was just like this wild thing. Michael got super hooked on it as well. Both of us were like literally having separate Juuls for separate parts of the house. Like, I have never been more hooked on something in my life. And looking at that, the drugs that I was dabbling with when I was younger, the fact that that's what I got hooked on, out of all the things I could have got hooked on, that shows how powerful a nicotine addiction can actually be. And I also think with nicotine and smoking in general, it's not something that like alters your day to day. So it's a very functional addiction. So I think that's why it's like really difficult as well. So going from barely smoking anymore to vaping full time when it's supposed to be something that transitions you off of cigarettes just goes to show how counterproductive vaping actually is. I mean, I know that there's been people that have gone from smoking cigarettes full time to vaping and it is considered better for them. But I don't know how quick it takes from them to get off of vaping to not smoking at all, because vaping just feels so much more addictive. So it does feel counterproductive. And the amount of people that have actually been absolute no smokers to full-time vapers is really alarming as well. Like most of the people I've spoken to and know never smoked ciggies before vaping. So it's actually got people more hooked onto vaping and started their journey with nicotine addiction in general from the vapes coming out. It's just wild. I had very quick side effects from vaping compared to smoking, and I will list some of them. Sore throat for one, especially like hitting that vape constantly, you're going to get a sore throat. I would get raised glands, which obviously that was never a good sign because it's affecting my immune system, continual phlegm and stuffy nose, raging anxiety. Like I can't even drink a full strength coffee anymore, guys. Literally, I cannot drink. If I even have one shot of coffee, I have a fucking horrible day with my anxiety. So I was getting raging anxiety without even realizing it from the vaping. And that really actually did affect my day-to-day and how I was functioning. I was very on edge all the time as well. I would get brain fog. Brain fog was really bad actually towards the end. I would forget things all the time and I would just constantly feel like I'm in a bit of a haze. And knowing that it was a vice for me, reaching out for something like that was actually going to make me more foggy and more anxious, but I couldn't stop the habit. It was just like such a counterproductive thing for me to be doing when I'm feeling like shit and I put my hand out for my vice that makes me feel better momentarily. It actually makes me feel worse in the long run. So it's just this horrible fucking cycle. Anybody that vapes will know that you will rage out when you can't find that vape. I remember fucking flipping furniture over, swearing, carrying on, being like, where the fuck is my vape? Like I was that bitch for years. Like if my vape was missing and I only had one vape, or it was like out of charge, or I've run out of pods, bro, I was mad. Like it's like an instant rage that I can't explain, but it's like very strong addiction vibes, like very, very strong addiction vibes. Another thing with vaping and like being out and sharing other people's vapes is I found that I got sick way more frequently, which is really gross to think about. But, if you go and have a big night out and you didn't have a vape and you're sucking on somebody else's the whole night and they're sick, and the germs and all the people that are passing it around, I would get sick pretty often when I was in America and I was doing that. And, I just didn't think too much of it, but I knew it was from that. But it was like it didn't stop me, which is just so foul. Even when I tried to slow down or quit when I was in America, when it was like at the peak of, people doing it, I found it very, very difficult to not do it. Like if I didn't take a vape out, as I said, I was going to be sucking on somebody else's because everyone was vaping. It was so hard to get away from. And even when some of us were like, we should really get off of this, it was just impossible, especially if you have housemates that are doing it, like, or a fucking partner that's doing it. Like, how are you supposed to not do it? It's really fucking hard. And like, hats off to anybody that has successfully stopped vaping when their partner's doing it full time. If you have, can you like message me? Because I don't know anybody that has managed to do that. And that takes so much discipline. It's so difficult. Even now that I have quit vaping, if someone does that around me in a room, I want some. And I haven't been doing it full time for years now, and I want some. It's that pull. The adverts are like so fucking stupid half the time, but that no vaping, stop vaping advert, and it's like that pull and they're all being pulled to the vape. That's legitimately how it feels. Like that's how it feels for me. When I saw the ad, I was like, wow, that's the first time one of those ads has been like quite on point with the message that they're sending. Like it's literally it pulls me in. I can't help it. I just want to taste that fucking iced berry or whatever flavor it is. It's disgusting, but I want it. It's horrible. I hate saying that. But it's so fucking true. Okay, let's stop yapping on about my history with smoking and start talking about how I managed to quit vaping. I wanted to share with you exactly how I did it. It might not work for everybody, but I feel like this really worked for me and these are the steps that I took. So I've got a whole bunch of information here if you're interested. And this is why it would be a really good episode to send somebody. If you don't smoke yourself, if you know somebody that does, and you want to give them some advice that isn't judgmental and fucking unrealistic, then this is the perfect episode to do so, in my opinion. So first of all, you want to understand and address your triggers. You want to write down, pen and paper or in your phone, the moments that you feel the most triggered that make you want to smoke, okay? You might think that it might not be specific things, but when I sat down and really thought about it and figured out the specifics of when I wanted to smoke the most, it was actually really interesting, even just to, learn my own personal triggers. So number one was seeing others smoke. That can be on TV, in person, someone walking past and I can get a whiff of it. Usually more cigarette smoke than vaping. Like I don't necessarily love the smell of somebody else's vape. I like the taste of vapes. I don't like the smell as such, but smelling a cigarette going past, seeing anybody smoking on social media, smoking on TV, a photo of someone smoking, not quite as much, but it is there, especially if I've had a bad day. But visually seeing other people smoking makes me want to smoke. Drinking alcohol. I think pretty much everyone that smokes and drinks will understand that the two go hand in hand. When I'm drinking alcohol and I reckon it only takes about 2 to 3 drinks and I could have a very cheeky cigarette or vape. Doesn't matter which one now. A lot of people that vape and didn't smoke before will just want the vape. Even when I listen to drum and bass music, like that's another trigger of mine, like a happy trigger. But even when I listen to drum and bass, it comes on like Triple J or something and I'm driving along and I'm thinking about the festivals I used to go to, I used to play at, DJing in general. Like DJing made me want to smoke a lot too, to be honest. But yeah, just being in that like club scene or around heavy bass music, that makes me want to smoke too. So there's a lot of different triggers to it. And I honestly don't know if I will ever lose those. But yeah, it's something that goes hand in hand 100%. That to this day still has not left my triggers. Like I am looking around. If somebody has a vape that I'm with, I'm like, give me a little bit of that. I just want to be really honest with this and cut the bullshit because that's what this podcast is about. So yeah, that is a big one for me. Stressful situations, still a big trigger for me. When I am super stressed out, or something has really upset me, or I'm super overwhelmed, there's times where I will go and have a cigarette. I purposely don't let myself have vapes lying around the house, which I'll talk about later. If I have a vape somewhere where I'm living, car, whatever, I will end up going to that and it makes me jump straight back onto the vaping train. When I have a cigarette, because I have to go outside for it and it makes everything stink and you've got to brush your teeth after and wash your hands and your clothes smell. And because of that and the fact that the nicotine is way more regulated, I don't have an issue with a little cigarette here and there. But if I do have a vape, I will run into problems with that. And it's very easy for me to jump back into smoking it until I've finished that vape and then I want another one. So yeah, stressful situations, I will sometimes at the absolute brink of like peak anxiety or about to have a meltdown, sometimes I will go and have a cigarette. And I feel like I always kind of went to cigarettes when I was stressed. So social anxiety and overstimulation for me is another big one. So if there's too many people around, too loud, too much talking, I'm getting overstimulated, I often want to go away somewhere and decompress with a cigarette. I just want to like get out and have a breather. That's something that I used to do when I was at like parties or clubs and stuff. So I think it kind of comes from there. But it's, yeah, again, I probably would prefer a cigarette over a vape in that situation. I feel like vaping is it's going to make my heart race. I'm going to want more. It's not very relaxing. So although cigarettes can do that to me as well, depending on how I'm feeling. But yeah, overstimulation can be a big one for me. Anger can be a big one for me. So if I get really pissed off, which actually isn't that often anymore compared to when I was younger, I feel like I was way more hot-headed and had a short fuse. That used to make me want to smoke, which kind of just high emotions in general, I think makes me want to smoke. But yeah, when I'm really pissed off about something or I'm really hurt about something that's made me angry, then I am very triggered by that, and that does make me want to smoke. And I'll probably at that point just smoke whatever's there, whether it's a vape or a cigarette. And the last one that I figured out was boundary violations. Violations with your boundaries, oh my gosh, that can be so triggering. And when you feel like you don't have a voice with it as well, that's something that really gets under my skin, and that makes me want to smoke in general. So yeah, boundary violations is a trigger to me wanting to smoke as a coping mechanism for that. Okay, so how did I manage to quit vaping and what method did I use? This won't work for everybody, but I did come up with a step-by-step of what I did so I can tell you guys. And oh my gosh, if this helps one of you, even one single person get through their addiction with vaping, I will be so fucking stoked because I know how hard it is. So to start off with, cutting down before fully quitting. This is what I call the Glovebox Method. So this was during peak summer. I ended up deciding that if I was going to vape, I needed to make it a conscious thing for me to do. So when I say that, I didn't want it to just be somewhere in the house that was easy for me to access. I wanted it to be somewhere that was uncomfortable or annoying, or I had to consciously make the effort to do it. So being that it was peak summer, I decided to put it in my glove box of my car. So every time that I needed to smoke, because by that point, I think I was working at my computer or I was doing some kind of filming, whatever it was. And I was like, right, I'm putting this thing away in the glove box. It was fucking stinking hot. It was like high 30s, foul outside. Didn't want to be outside. So when I wanted to have a smoke, I had to get my keys, stop what I was doing, go outside into the stinking heat, go to the glove box, get out the vape that was roasting hot. And like a roasting hot vape is even more foul than a normal vape. Like I don't even, now I think about it because of the batteries that are in them, that was a bad idea. Fuck. Anyway, this worked for me. I didn't really think about the overheating of it. But anyway, I would have this vape and it wasn't very pleasurable. Didn't really enjoy it. I'd put it back, lock everything away. And then every single time that I did that, I had to go through that process of discomfort. So the lesson that I learned out of that is it showed me how many times I would unconsciously go for my vape because it was always next to me. So my hand actually physically went to pick something up that wasn't there. That freaked me out. I was like, wow, I have never been so dependent on something. I haven't even been that dependent on a man before. Like that thing was fucking attached to me at the hip. So when I started physically doing that, when it wasn't there, blew my fucking mind. I was like, wow, this thing is basically a part of me at this point. So this method made me cut down significantly how much I was having throughout the day. I know people, I've seen them use like lock boxes, which great fucking idea, like awesome idea. The lock box where it only opens so many times a day or whatever timing you put on it, and then it's literally locked in there, you cannot get it out. Great alternative to, you know, what I've just suggested. You will come up with other ways of making it have to be a big conscious decision to go out and do it, but that will slow down the amount that you're having it. So this significantly helped me cut down the amount that I was doing it every day, because you can't go from smoking full time all the way straight to cold turkey. I mean, you absolutely can, but this will just taper off it being really fucking, it's almost traumatic. It does feel traumatic when you go cold turkey, like just from having it all the time to absolutely nothing. It just completely fucks with your brain chemistry as well, because like your brain is wanting that nicotine. So this tapers that off, and it's like a first step that I really recommend. Okay, so after this is where I would actually go cold turkey and I would get rid of the device. I remember actually running over the device and sending a video to Michael of me quitting. I'm pretty sure when Michael quit, he put all of his vapes into like a bucket of water as well. So yeah, we were both getting rid of this habit because it was actually affecting our health and our mental health as well with all the anxiety. What you need to be prepared for is what I found the first 5 days were a fucking living hell. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I mean, look, some other people will be different. Everyone will be different. But I found that first 5 days was so fucking difficult. And I had to have so much self-discipline. But you need to get through it. Like, you need to get through those first 5 days. Like, as difficult as it is, once you're past that, it will be so much easier. It won't be like waking up in a rage. Like, I was so angry when I was in those first 5 days. I was absolutely raging all the time. I actually planned it so that I wasn't going to be around many people. So planning your timing is really essential for when you're going to do this. And I think it's important to tell loved ones, family, friends, whoever, warn them about what you're about to do. I know it can be really difficult doing that as well because, I mean, when you're ready to quit, you're ready to quit. But you also kind of don't want to tell people because if you lapse or if it doesn't work out this time trying to quit, you don't want their judgment. But you'll know what works right for you. If you want to tell people, tell them, just so you can get that external support and understanding, because it is a really fucking hard thing to do. Otherwise, just keep it to yourself. Whatever works best for you, there's no rules as to how to go about that. It's whatever feels right for you. This also goes into one of my other dot points in deciding whether you want solitude or whether you want to be around people that can help support you on this journey. As I said, it's not an easy one. So make a decision as to whether you want to be around people or not. I personally had a really short fuse and I didn't want to be around anyone. I didn't even want to hear anyone else talk. Like, I didn't want to socialize. So I planned this at a time when I wasn't going to be around many people. And I'm so glad I did. So that's what worked best for me. One thing I want to say is self-compassion is key when you're going through this journey. Quitting any kind of vice for you is something that you need to go easy on yourself with. Obviously have that discipline, but also be very understanding of the nature of what you're trying to do. It's a habit that you have formed potentially over years, like myself, and you do have setbacks, and you need to just not be too hard on yourself because it's very counterproductive shaming yourself or guilting yourself. You just need to keep thinking about your end goal and making the right steps to get there and not being too hard on yourself, because there is no such thing as failure. Especially when you're trying to do something for your health. Like, go easy on yourself, dude. This shit is hard. And I don't think people really understand that enough. Like, it's so not as simple as just, oh, throw it out, I'm fine. Like, now what are you going to do that's going to make you feel better? You have to end up making healthy habits for yourself to replace something you were using as a vice. Like, this is no easy street you're walking down. So please don't be too hard on yourself. And remember that this is absolutely doable. Just please have that self-compassion because you need to be kind to yourself during times like this. Another thing I want to say is please just remember that you're only human and every small step counts on this journey. And also, you'll know when you want to quit. Nobody else can tell you when to quit smoking or anything else really, whatever your vice is. If there's something that you're addicted to, you are the only person that can make that decision. And for whatever your reason is, you aren't going to want to quit until you are there and you're ready to quit. So I know that can be really hard for people to hear as well, loved ones that are worried about you and your health, or if your partner's doing it and you want them to stop. Frank actually wanted me to stop, and it was one of the contributing factors that made me want to quit, but also my health was a big issue. But if your partner is doing it, I do understand how hard it can be being on the receiving end of them not wanting to quit. But yeah, I guess with everything, like, if somebody doesn't want to do it, they're not going to want to do it. And it is really hard. But maybe sending them this episode will help, because I think speaking to them with understanding is way more productive than shaming someone or getting mad at them for what they're doing. Another reason why I quit, the timing was actually really perfect. I did want to mention this part. So I was used to smoking American-made vapes. So they were a lot more regulated than your Chinese-made, very unregulated vapes. And I find that I have a really bad physical reaction to Chinese disposable vapes that you get from like a corner store here in Australia. The unregulated amounts of nicotine in it make me super unwell. Like, the head spins I get off of those things are fucked. And also just the extra chemicals they're putting in. So when Australia decided to make vapes illegal, you couldn't import them in without a prescription, blah, blah, blah. Basically, they just wanted to tax it. they saw a nicotine product that was there and they weren't making money out of it. So they decided to make it really difficult for Australians to be able to get regulated vapes. And they knew that the black market Chinese vapes were going to come in. That's my opinion of it. Like, honestly, I really don't think that they were caring too much about our health when they made that decision. I think they just wanted to get their money, and they were still letting all of these Chinese vapes in. Like, they're still getting in. Guys, government, if you're listening, you're definitely not. They're still getting in. Everyone's still smoking them. They're unregulated. They're really fucking bad for you. And basically, back to my point, I didn't want to smoke Chinese vapes because they made me really sick. So this was a great time for me to go, you know what, I'm going to kick the habit because I refuse to smoke those because they make me so unwell. So that was my reason for quitting as well. It was the right time. So to finish this up, my journey with smoking, I'm at a point where I don't smoke during the week at all. I wouldn't say I'm a smoker. I would say I'm the occasional smoker, and it's usually a cigarette. If there's a vape in the room, I'll probably have some and then I'll absolutely hate it, and it will remind me why I don't like the Chinese vapes. But yeah, that's where I am with my smoking quitting journey. I think I will always be partial to a cigarette. And yeah, I mean, to be honest, I had one during this launch when I was really stressed out with getting, all the content together. I just went outside and had a ciggy. So I think that was the last of the packet that I had that lasted me literally like a year. So that's the frequency of it now. I'm really fucking happy with where I am on my smoking now. To not be vaping is a huge achievement for me. I'm so happy that I'm not doing it anymore because it did have such a pull on me. And yeah, I was really noticing my health getting affected by it. So that's where I'm at with smoking. I just want to be super honest. Like, if you saw me out having a ciggy with a drink somewhere, like, yeah, sometimes I will do that. So that's where I'm at with my smoking journey, but it's way better than me vaping 24/7. And yeah, my health feels the best it ever has. My lung capacity is great. I can go running without issues. So yeah, I'm really happy with where my health is at now. Reflecting on my journey with smoking and vaping, I've come to realize that overcoming addiction is as much about self-acceptance as it is breaking a habit. Quitting isn't about being perfect, and really it's about showing up for yourself. Even when it feels impossible, it's about understanding that setbacks don't erase your progress, and every step forward, no matter how small, is worth celebrating. Addiction is hard, guys, and some people probably don't even think, like, when you say addiction and then you think vaping, like, it's just so normalized now, but you're hooked when you're vaping. When you see people just constantly sucking on one of those things, they are absolutely hooked. So it is real. Like, nicotine addiction is very, very real. I will leave you guys with this statement. Quitting doesn't mean you'll never feel the pull of addiction again, but it does mean you are reclaiming a little more of your power every day. And that is a journey worth taking. So that's the episode, guys. I hope that resonated with you. Wherever you are at in your journey, I'm sending you a lot of love and compassion. And yeah, I hope this episode could have helped one of you, at least one of you. And let me know your thoughts on this episode because, yeah, if this can actually help someone on their journey quitting, I will just be so over the moon to hear about it. So yeah, hit me up, let me know your thoughts, and wishing you all the best. I love you guys, and I will catch you in the next episode. Mwah. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please give it a share. You never know who might need a little emotional content in their life. For daily feel-good posts, follow @_emotional content on Instagram and TikTok. And don't forget to hit that follow button so you're notified every time a new episode drops. Your support means the absolute world to me.